Now, a committee of MPs has claimed that new rules which require people to show photo ID at the polling station will see up to 8 million of us risk of losing our right to vote at the next general election. Joining me right now is former Labour advisor Richard Power-Sayeed. Also still with us is Philip Ingram in the studio. Richard, thanks so much for joining us. Look, you have to have voter ID. Sorry, you have to have photo ID to do virtually anything. I remember having to show photo ID when I got married. You have to have photo ID in the form of a passport to travel in or out of the country. Not everyone will have a passport. Most people will have a driving licence. To claim benefits, you surely have to identify yourself. Who is going to not be allowed to vote because they don't have photo ID?
So there are literally 2 million people in this country who don't have the ID that they need to vote, and that's very new, as in previously you didn't have to have that kind of identification, came in with the last election.
How do they go about their normal daily lives without photo ID?
It's a really good question, and what I would say is think about, you know, that neighbour who doesn't really go out very much, that elderly relative who would never buy anything online, and if they really needed to, they'd get a friend to. These people deserve to vote too. In fact, I would say, like, because a lot of them are quite socially disadvantaged in lots of ways, those are the people who particularly
we should encourage to vote.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And it's going to be made so difficult for them. It has been made so difficult.
Well, the thing is, the reality is that voting and having to show voter ID when you vote is the norm in most European countries. Philip Ingram was talking on the show earlier from Northern Ireland. It's been the norm in Northern Ireland
for quite a few elections.
For a very long time.
We've done a trial in the United Kingdom of 1.36 million people.
For years.
Who, the same arguments came out before it came in saying this is going to disenfranchise people from voting and everything else. It hasn't.
Well, we know that it has already disenfranchised people in the UK because of the last local election, so that's only a small proportion.
That was the first time it was used, wasn't it? And lots of people turned up and didn't know they needed ID.
14,000 people. And at the local elections, we'll probably have lots of people again turning up and not being able to vote. And the much bigger problem is all of those people who just don't bother even going to the polling station in the first place.
Because they don't have it in the first place.
Yeah,
but here's the thing. One of the things, like, we don't have ID cards in this country, so it's much easier. Say, European countries, you require ID. Well, it's fine, because everyone is required to have ID. In fact, I mean, if you're in Germany, you're a foreign citizen, you're actually required to carry your passport with you at all times.
Yeah.
I mean, people, you have to have photo ID. So it is different. I've always fought against us having ID in a sort of, papers, please, society. However, again, I'm going back to I'm of the age where you got your Blockbuster video rental card, you had to show photo ID. The thing is, when they announce this, then there are rules. Here's some ID you can use. You can use your passport, your driving licence. An awful lot of the ID that is allowed to be used is ID for older people in terms of their pension entitlement, their travel cards and things like that, but not the same number of cards available for younger people. Surely we could just, issue cards that people could voluntarily choose to have, and they could be issued for... I know that you can get them for free. You can apply online and get them for free. That information is not widely out there, and these are exactly the sort of people who wouldn't do that. And
exactly.
I do get that. I do get that. But there must be a way of getting round this issue, because my guess is that the vast majority of people who don't have photo ID don't engage in civil society at all, and they don't vote.
Well, let's think about the system that they have in Canada, which is not perfect, but basically what you can do in Canada is it's election day, I've got ID, but, maybe my elderly relative or my neighbour doesn't. We go together to the polling station. I sign an affidavit saying they are who they are. Yep. If I'm lying, I'm going to get in lots of trouble.
To be fair, that's what you do when you apply for a passport for your kid.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and we have a legal affidavit system in this country already, so it wouldn't be some incredible innovation. The fact that the Conservative Party has chosen not to go with that very sensible system that a similar country to us, Canada, has got, the fact that they are going with something which is different, disenfranchises 2 million people, the fact that Jacob Rees-Mogg said this is gerrymandering, he said we are deliberately gerrymandering the system, that says to me that you've got a desperate government that knows it's on the way out and they are trying to rig the system.
And the idea is that the sort of people who have ID are more likely to be older people, more likely to vote Conservative, and that's going to prevent people who are more likely to vote Labour from voting. And that is obviously concerned and should be dealt with absolutely 100%. However, I found it extraordinary, the number of things that you can't do if you don't have ID of any kind, not even photo ID, but any ID, any proof of who you are at all. And yet someone can just rock up at a polling station without even their polling card and go, I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and I would like that. I would like to have that polling card. And then I then rock up half an hour later and they say, well, you've already voted. And there's basically nothing I can do about it.
And the amazing thing is that system, the wonderful thing is that system has actually worked really well. We've had 8 cases of proven voter fraud.
We don't investigate them.
No doubt there's way more. No doubt there's way more. But even if, indulge me on this, there's been 8 proven cases over the last 10 years. Let's say we'll be generous, we'll call it 1 a year. Now let's say that for each one of those, there was 10,000
It's still on a tiny scale.
It's still tiny.
I get that. However, we've also seen some very big issues about like postal voting and particularly in certain constituencies where we know, the man is the master of the house and he tells everyone how they vote. And look, there are definitely some issues. I think you can resolve all of this stuff by everyone having to turn up, pass their vote and prove who they are.
So there's a better solution to the postal vote one, which is that you just say there's a limit to the number of postal votes that you can do in one go.
Yeah, OK, well, again, if there are 10 people living in the house and each person posts theirs individually, then that's a different thing. Just want to ask you also, just very briefly, before we finish, just had this announcement that the Conservative candidate for the Greater Manchester mayoralty votes on May the 2nd is Dan Barker. He has defected to Reform UK. Tories are going to be searching for a new candidate. Of course, we know Andy Burnham, the Labour MP, Manchester mayor in situ. What do you make of that news?
I think that the Conservative Party is in this, really unenviable situation where if they shift to the centre, they'll lose one chunk of votes. If they shift to the right, they'll lose another. The only way you win an election is by having a big coalition.
Very broad coalition.
Very broad
with
coalition.
Lunatics like Jeremy Corbyn. Of course, bearing in mind, Reform UK going up in the polls appears to hit Labour votes as well. We know that. I'm going to say very big thank you to Richard Power-Sayeed for joining us, a former Labour advisor. Big thank you also to Philip Ingram joining us all today. Thank you so much indeed.